Welcome to the ESI Africa studio. Today I'm speaking with Nicholas Kuhne, who is the CEO of Wunderbrand in South Africa. Welcome, Nicholas.
Hi, good to be here.
Nicholas, we're going to be talking about the utility business model. We know that things are definitely developing in that industry and how the customer is engaging with the utility and how they then keep up with those trends. So my question to you is about how does a utility corporation go about rebranding themselves?
Some people ask whether utility companies actually need to be branded per se, because if one looks at the South African context where it is a monopoly, you don't really have a choice with who you use. When we go into more developed markets or other markets, there are opportunities where branding utility is important because you need to be able to differentiate yourself between competitors. So I think from a monopoly or state-owned, enterprise-owned organization, they really need to rather look at the story that they're pitching to the public in terms of either saving electricity or the new uses of it, because in a lot of these markets, electricity usage is new. So, and there are also new technologies coming into the markets that the consumer needs to be educated on. So I don't think it's necessarily a branding issue, it's more an awareness and a education communication challenge that they need to look at.
Managing the customer's perception about you, is that something they need to do, or do they just sit back and hope the customer understands their business?
The issue with a lot of these utilities, similar to the insurance industry, is that nobody really wants to pay for energy, nobody really wants to pay for water. So it's in one way a grudge purchase. So how these businesses need to function is they need to look at the value that they're giving to society in general versus just to that one individual. People are more likely to support and not go off grid if they see that the utility is giving them additional value or giving the community as a whole value. For example, bursaries, getting more female engineers into businesses by electrifying areas that have never been electrified. That's the job of a lot of these utilities versus just giving energy from a socket.
Okay. And you've got a lot of experience throughout the world. Is this something that a utility is experiencing across the board, or is it specific to a region?
I think it's, again, market dependent, and it also depends whether it is a state-owned enterprise or whether it's a for-profit organization. So a lot of the for-profits are really squeezed in terms of how much money they can really get out of a customer. So the amount of money that is spent on branding is probably going to be constrained quite a lot. Where we are going to see the importance of brand coming in is where utilities step into the background and the likes of home automation from Alexa, from Amazon, and Google Home come into the fore, where they will be the ones who have big data and have a greater understanding of consumers' needs and so on, and obviously now the market works slightly better than the utilities, and utilities really are just a conduit for getting power from A to B. I think other companies are going to be starting to, there needs to be a partnership with these new technology companies and so on in terms of new ways of utilizing energy.
This brings me to customer engagement. This is so important. How do you link your brand and customer engagement?
So we had an excellent discussion 2 days ago with a Ugandan power utility, which dealt with 250,000 engagements with their customers every month. Now, Uganda isn't a very large country, so getting that amount of engagement is enormous. And how that's dealt with is a mixture of social media, obviously, emails, and specifically mobile, and it's the likes of WhatsApp that's been used quite a lot. So I think bots are starting to be used because they're very generic questions that are asked. How much are you billing me this month? Why is the power out? Is there going to be a power outage? Etc. So they're very basic questions. It's not deep, they're not very deep questions when it comes to your consumers' needs from a utility. But I think that's where public service announcements and so on, those campaigns will be more useful for utilities than trying to push their brand.
I'm interested that you have used Uganda as an example. Do you think maybe they are over connecting with their customers on social media? Should they step back a bit?
I think what they're doing is they're responding to customer concerns and messages, as opposed to sending out thousands of messages. So they are responding versus sending out millions of messages. I think that's important.
Good for a brand.
It is. So that they're being responsive is key. It's a very low interest category when one looks at consumers, where we go to perfumes and personal care items. That's a very high interest category. But utilities really are low on the radar. So your engagement with them, if it's once a month, it's a lot. If it, I'm sure, I don't know when last you spoke to your utility. It's not something you necessarily
But you do unless you absolutely have a problem.
Exactly. But when that problem does happen, you want that to be dealt with immediately. So that one engagement that they have is so important.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Nicholas.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Nicolette Pomba-van-Zyl, editor of ESI Africa, coming to you from the African Utility Week studio. See you next year.